Okay.
But he's
How?
doing great.
Okay, I see.
He's
Now.
doing great.
Okay, that's good. But he's fine. He's well. He's thriving.
Yeah, he's thriving, running around 17 months now.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. And I also saw your wife, man. She's doing such an amazing job. Congratulations.
Thank you. She's trying to push her enterprise in healthcare for the elderly. So we'll talk about more of that offline. But yeah, you know, our elderly suffer a lot in this country, especially those in the rural areas.
They do.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So Michelle, I'll be coming to you with some ideas of how to grow that in the Grow Africa, how to grow an enterprise that may not seemingly make money because you're providing healthcare to the elderly who are our mothers and grandmothers in rural communities.
Let's have a chat about that. I think I'm ready to hand over to the Startup Uganda team. Yeah.
Okay, I think everything is set. Is Faith here yet? She can turn on her video because she's supposed to lead the session from now. I'm sending everyone the link to the YouTube live, so in case you want to share that as well. We're live, and when Faith joins, we can officially start.
Great. Thank you.
I'm already getting a message that my connection is unstable. So at some point, I will have to switch off my video because, you know, Uganda.
I understand that pain. I've gotten it now. I have like 4 backups and I'm not even certain.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it does behave, but just in case.
Okay, no problem.
We know anything might happen, right?
Yeah, we expect anything with our network.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so sorry. There's something disturbing me about my connection. May I request about 2 or 3 minutes to switch service providers? That's what I've been struggling with. Is that okay?
No
so
problem.
Sorry. Yeah, let me just switch. Let me switch service providers and come back. So sorry, guys.
Okay.
This internet challenge, is it deliberate? Is it infrastructure? Is it is it something deliberate, or is it a mistake? Like what happens? How comes? I fail to understand.
Well, we had an event last week on Friday, and I had Liquid Telecom, Smile, NTN, Zuku, and Rock. And I still was struggling between each of those.
Oh my God.
Just to make sure we had a seamless connection, every attendee had their own service provider.
Yeah, I wonder, Waringa and Michelle, I thought things are better in Kenya because I know of friends who are doing coding work, even somewhere in like distant places like Nakuru, but their internet is okay. Is it East Africa? I thought
it's good, but it's expensive. The only issue with Kenya, for me, I think, but I think this is me coming from Uganda. the internet is expensive. So it could just be a currency issue, but it is very good. At least most of the time, it works.
Yeah.
Michelle, what was your experience?
Michelle, what's your experience if you have done internet in Kenya and here?
I actually find Kenyan internet very affordable and very reliable, because when I look at what I pay for good internet in Uganda vis-a-vis what I pay for basic internet in Uganda vis-a-vis what I pay for pretty good internet in Kenya, from a cost perspective, I would take the Kenyan prices anytime.
Yeah, I hear that from my friends in Nairobi, even in far other places. I think here there's a bit of some, I don't know, government interference, but we'll leave it at that.
And also, yeah, it has actually become really bad after the lockdown, after the internet.
Great, I see Faith is back, so.
Faith is on mute.
Faith, you're on mute.
Oh dear. Good morning, everyone. I'm hoping that this current service provider will work for me. How are we doing?
We're good.
I'm hoping that everyone that's meant to be here is.
Yes.
And I think we can introduce ourselves in the chat so that we don't, take a lot of time, since I know Michelle is very prompt when it comes to time. We may please be able to introduce ourselves in the chat, but for purposes of getting to know me, my name is Faith Mulunji. I am a lot of things. I'm a digital communications consultant, and I do that on a freelance basis. I also do moderation. For instance, how I'm going to spend my morning with you, with every one of you. And I'm also a feminist. I also run a Rape Victims Rehabilitation Center called Amani. And I'm so excited to be part of today's discussion around adaptable leadership. I'm really, really excited to hear from each and every one of our speakers, but also because we are going to be having Michelle Mboha to just give us, I'm really excited to hear from her, especially the fact that she's our keynote speaker for the day. And then we'll we'll just chat through what adaptive leadership looks like, innovation, and with the impact of COVID-19 on innovation hubs and so much more. I love that we are introducing ourselves in the chat. Please feel free to network respectfully and let's get to know each other, what we do, our services, and so on and so forth. I also will have panelists together with me, with whom we'll just chat through adaptive leadership. However, I would love to first and foremost hand over to Michelle Mboha to just give us, just take us away and not only give us a keynote speech, but also what Growth Africa has been up to, what the Kampala Innovation Week is up to, and all of that amazing stuff. So Mishi, I'll definitely hand over to you, and I'm really excited. But also, if you are tech savvy, if you are into social media, please be able to tweet and tag at Growth Africa, tag at Startup Uganda. Also, the hashtag we are using today is KIW 2021, so that you can share with your platforms whatever you might be learning from this session. Michelle, the floor is all yours. We are all ears.
Great. Thank you so much, Faith, for that amazing introduction and for getting us kicked off. I'm really excited to be here. I'm here with a number of, could I say, people I call family. I'm here with quite a number of people I met along my Acumen journey, and this is something that I think if nobody knows what Acumen does, feel free to Google Acumen. They're all about impactful leadership, and I'm so glad to get the opportunity just to connect with other fellows from across the different years in Acumen, both the East Africa Fellowship and the Global Fellowship. So today I'm really here to talk a little bit about adaptive leadership. I want to do the job of really just introducing the concept, because I think the best experiences in the lived examples that my amazing panelists have today. So I just really want to introduce what adaptive leadership is. Like I mentioned before, this is something I learned when I went through my Acumen journey in 2020. And it's something I wish more people, more entrepreneurs, more leaders could get the opportunity to just experience, even if it's through the Acumen Academy that they have or through the fellowship. It's definitely something everybody should embrace and learn a little bit more about. Just as we start, I want to take you a little bit back to March 2020. Now, Growth Africa, we are an accelerator program and we operate in 6 African countries. And our mode of operation has always been physical trainings in each of the countries that we operate in. Those trainings run for a period of about 6 months, and they usually start in March and run all the way to September or October of that year. So clearly, as if anybody was in Uganda March 2020, you know the worst happened for people who run these types of program. Come March 2020, we were suddenly put in a post-lockdown, no travel, no movement, airports were closed, borders were closed. And I think for us as an organization that we have been doing the accelerator program for about 9 years right now, and it's always been a physical program. So for the first time in our 9-year experience of running programs across 5, 6 countries, we were faced with such a huge conundrum. How do we continue to deliver the value that we want to deliver with all that is changing? We all know how things were changing so rapidly. You do not know if one day what would happen the next day. And so that for us quickly became an adaptive challenge that we faced. How do we remain relevant? How do we continue to deliver on the promise that we have in the midst of things changing every day, every hour? It got to a point where things were even changing on an hourly basis, and you really could not plan around such a scenario, such a situation. And so I really want to bring you guys just to the concept of what adaptive leadership is based on that. Now, first of all, I think adaptive leadership is a very practical approach to solving business and life issues. So I know most of us here are entrepreneurs, but I think part of the things I picked up from going through this particular learning was leadership does not only occur at the workplace, it also occurs at home and wherever you are. And so I think adaptive leadership is something that for me has played a much bigger role in my personal life, shockingly, than it has in my work life and in my leadership roles in the office. So I think that's the first thing just to point out. It's really a practical approach to solving business and life issues. And I found it to be a really amazing guide to identifying and focusing on the things that matter in the midst of all the chaos that's happening. So that's just briefly it. It is guided by quite a number of principles, but I'll just quickly go through some of them. So the first is really emotional intelligence. So that's really an ability to be sensitive to other people's feelings. And I've always told leaders and entrepreneurs, if you ever find yourself constantly in a situation where you are the last person to know life events happening in your team members' lives, then there's a pause for you and there's a question you actually have to ask yourself. Am I emotionally intelligent, or is this something that I have to be more intentional about? Do you find out of the blue you realize one of your team members has had an ailing parent, and for you at no point did you notice anything that was happening? That speaks a little bit to emotional intelligence. Other principles that really guide adaptive leadership around organizational justice, and this really speaks to fairness and openness, and an honesty, and really a willingness to hear the truth, even when the truth is really difficult for you to hear. And I know, Kasaga, you spoke a little bit when we were chit-chatting in the beginning of some of the hard feedback you had to receive. And then this is probably where a lot of entrepreneurs fit in as well. It's really about development and a love for new things. As entrepreneurs, most of us are already innovators. We're already people who love thinking through strategy. And so this is something that carries on as well in adaptive leadership. How do you think through strategy? How do you take on innovation? How do you take on change, especially if it's going to help your organization succeed and be a little better and better prepared for change? And finally, I think one of the last principles is really character. I think it's very important for people to note that respect is earned. It's not demanded, it's not commanded, you can't force it out of anybody. And this really speaks to your character. Are you open enough? Are you comfortable in admitting mistakes? Are you confident enough in saying, we've gone too far down the road, and this is not the right path. We need to maybe go back to the drawing board. Now, a lot of the panelists will speak more on this, but one of the things that I picked out, particularly from the Acumen program, was the concept of getting on the balcony. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that. Now, do you constantly find yourself doing things? Like, is that something that you constantly find yourself? And I'm guilty of this. I find myself quite often just doing, answering emails, attending meetings, going for workshops, setting up schedules, checking up on people. Like, I constantly find myself doing. And this is something that I had to realize I am playing a little bit to poor leadership skills every time I do that. Now, we have ideally what we call the dance floor, which is where all the action happens. This is where the day-to-day work is happening. This is where the emails are getting sent, the deadlines are being worked on, and all of that. But I want to introduce you guys just to the concept of stepping away from the dance floor from time to time and getting onto the balcony. Going just like a typical balcony, it's above everything else. The balcony is usually where you see the big picture, where you're going to get perspective in the midst of all the chaos that's happening. As entrepreneurs, there will always be chaos. As a leader, there will always be another emergency, another fire that needs to be put out. There's always going to be something that's happening, but it's very important for us to take some time to step out and ask ourselves, what is this chaos pointing to? What's the root of everything that's happening within this chaos? And what's the bigger picture that I'm perhaps ignoring because I'm too busy on the dance floor and I'm too busy just firefighting and solving day-to-day solutions? So that's something that I found very useful for me. And I want any of us to think about a situation where something shocked you. I think it's very easy to go to COVID-19 for most of us because that's something that really shocked generally the world. But I think my biggest shock for me came when we had a key team member resign within the Growth Africa office. And for me, that came as such a big shock because we were not prepared. This was an instrumental person within the organization. And it came out of the blue for me. And that's ideally something that we had not planned for. Now, this is something that's going to happen to us, whether it's today, tomorrow, but part of the aspects of leaving the dance floor and staying on the dance floor versus getting on the balcony is asking yourselves, when shocking events happen, what's your typical reaction to all of those? And I admit my first reaction was a blame game. Why did this person leave? They're probably not the best. Like I went onto the defensive to try and figure out, why is this person leaving? Why isn't this person staying? Why did they give me such short notice? And if you looking back now, they say hindsight is perfect, but we look back and I realize I probably spent much more time just blaming the person, blaming myself, just playing the blame game. And that action was just keeping me on the dance floor, rather than getting me away to a point of asking myself, what's the bigger picture here? What is this team member leaving trying to tell me about the gap that I could potentially have, either as a leader, and that's very painful to admit. Sometimes somebody leaves because you were perhaps not the best fit for that person, and that's a very painful admission to make. But rather than address those questions in that time, you spend so much time playing the blame game. So I think even us in our lives, it's very important for us to think a little bit about when emergencies happen, when shocks happen in your life, in your business, what's your typical reaction? Why do you find yourself staying on the dance floor? So that is really just blame gaming, your attention distracted, and how do you actually stay distracted from focusing on the core? What is it that happens? Is it you get distracted by media? Do you get distracted by gossip sometimes? Do you get distracted by, procrastination, doing other things? What is that happens to you? And just because this is learning, for me, it's always very important to ask yourself, looking back, if the similar situation happened again, how would I act differently? How would I think differently? Would I react the same way? Because we want to be able to change the way we address challenges when they are thrown at us, and how we take some steps back to really assess what's important. What is this problem trying to tell me about a deeper problem that could potentially be happening within my organization or my personal life? And that really is what the concept of adaptive leadership is. So I don't want to speak a lot because I want to give more time to the panelists to really give us a practical perspective. But I think there's always, so one of the quotes, I think this has been attributed to Albert Einstein, and he says if he had 1 hour to solve a problem, he would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. I think this basically really sums up for me what adaptive leadership is all about. There's always going to be that satisfaction in getting stuff done. There's always that thrill when you solve that first crisis and the next crisis and the next crisis. But I think true discipline comes when you refuse to get stuck on the dance floor, when you refuse to get satisfaction in just firefighting, and you actually take time to focus on what's the bigger picture. What are all these small things pointing to in the grander scheme of things? So I also believe true and lasting change. Honestly, you may agree with me or disagree with me, but I think it's only more likely if we are able to take a step back, deeply diagnose a challenge, and make sure you're diagnosing this challenge as early on as possible. Don't wait, don't spend so much time on the dance floor that you forget that this is a challenge that needs to be solved as quickly as possible. So for me, that really is what I wanted to speak a little bit about today. I will stop here and just hand it over back to Faith to take over from here.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I've personally, my take home is adaptive leadership begins with us, with ourselves, that introspection as leaders, as entrepreneurs. And I love the fact that once we are being or reflecting adaptive leadership, then it's able for us to lead our teams. I've also loved what you've mentioned about the balcony moment. I don't think I'm going to see it the same, because you are right. It takes you off from whatever is happening, and then you're able to see the bigger picture. For the rest of us that are attending, please do share what you're learning in the chats, so that Michelle and I are not talking to ourselves. But thank you so much for that keynote. Thank you so much for challenging us. And I'm pretty sure even some of us that are not yet entrepreneurs, there is stuff for us to pick and take home. Also, I'm going to ask if there is a possibility for that presentation to be sent to our emails. Michelle, is there a possibility? All right, great. Especially for anyone who might want it. You can also express your interest in the chats, and then we can organize how to send that to your email. And because we want to keep time, but also, again, like I said, I would want to know, we have about 4 minutes to head into the next session of this conversation. If there is something that has stood out for you, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to punch that into the chat. For you, from this conversation, when we look back from March 2020 to now, November 18th, eagerly waiting to see what the president will have to tell us on Saturday, what what lessons in your leadership skills, in your leadership styles has the keynote hit? Please feel free to communicate in the chat, because this is more of a conversation. It's not a lecture. But for the next session, I'm going to be hosting a panel, and I'm not going to stop reminding you that if you are into social media and you are learning something or two from this conversation, we are using the hashtag KIW 2021. That's Kampala Innovation Week 2021. And you can feel free to tag Growth Africa, Startup Uganda, and any other organizations that you might know that are in here. So for the next session, I am amazed to have panelists. I usually enjoy having a larger group of panelists, because then you get to hear from dissenting voices, but also from what everyone else has to say. And we are just going to be chatting about adaptive leadership and the different facets that it has, what the different experiences have been for the different people that are representing the different organizations from this conversation. And I'm definitely pleased to have with me. I'm going to be reading off my phone, because I tried writing down, but my handwriting is not as pretty as my face is. So I will definitely just read, read off my phone. I'm hoping that Abu Musuza from Flip Africa is here. Is Abu here with us?
So we have Waringa, James, and Joseph.
Okay, so Waringa Matinda from Village Energy Uganda, and then we also have Joseph Ogwal from Agro Supply Uganda. Will James Kasaga be joining us today for the conversation? And yeah, I think for the most part,
Kasaga Arena Itwe, I prefer.
Arena Itwe, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
thank
please.
You.
Thank you for the correction.
Just a quick request that I have to jump off by 11 exact, so I would rather.
Yes, we are going to keep time. We're definitely going to keep time. And maybe Michelle, is How and Nabuye going to be joining us for this conversation?
No.
Okay, so we just have James, Joseph, and Waringa. Great. Yes. So I request that the three turn on their cameras, and then we just start, because the questions are very simple and there aren't so many, so that we can be able to keep time. All right.
My internet is not very good, so I prefer. Joseph. Yeah.
All right, but thank you for joining us this morning. So I would like I wish I could go into deep introductions, but we had requested that the introductions be done in the chat. And for the three gentlemen, I think I'm going to start with you, Joseph Arinaitwe. This question is going to be answered by the three of you, but I would like to know, when you look at your organization and the Ugandan economy from day to day, in your experience, what is staying the same as we talk about adaptive leadership? What is staying the same, and what has not really been impacted by the different changes? Feel free to just open your microphone and answer the question, and then we'll go from Joseph. I would like to hear from James. Sorry, I would like to hear from Joseph, and then we'll hear from Waringa, respectfully, so we don't take so much time. So James, please do answer the question, and then we'll hear from the other two. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Faith. I'm on here, James Kasaga. I go by Kasaga. I'm blessed to be the co-founder and executive director at Teach for Uganda, and also recently co-founded First Teach for Uganda is a leadership social enterprises that focuses on developing the next generation of leaders to transform our education system in Uganda, that affords all kids, not just a few, as those who are in Kampala learning, but all kids an opportunity to learn and thrive. And we do that by basically hiring graduates from Makerere and other universities across the country, training them, skilling them, and placing them in rural communities to teach these children and be their role models, as also being community mobilizers, community education leaders of sorts, to bring them to school, help them stay in school, and also show them that they are their role models, that they one day can also be an engineer, a doctor, or even a business person like our friends that are on here. So we've been doing this for the last 5 years. And in 2020, March 30th, you remember very well that the president announced that all institutions were to be closed. And so immediately that Friday, my team and I had brought in our number 4 cohort of fellows. Those were supposed to be 96 of them. And they were supposed to be at ABU, which is African Bible University in Goa, for a 4 weeks residential training. This is a training that with a pre-service training that is supposed to really prepare them as leaders before they transition to these rural communities. These are communities with no electricity, no clean water, and they must work in those conditions and live in those conditions for 2 years of their fellowship. And on top of that, they work with parents, kids, understanding their journeys. So that same time, imagine having spent all that money for an entire month, our managing director, our co-founder, and I drove to Lubowa and had to tell not only the university, but a group of 90 young leaders that now you must drop everything and go back home for the foreseeable future. Just imagine that. And in that context, juxtaposed to the fact that 15 million young people had been sent home. Uganda, you know very well, for those who are online, is a country of young people. 45 million, 80% below the age of 30, literally median age is 16. Why Teach for Uganda focuses on this? Because this is the nation. 15 million young people. If we don't salvage them, our future is at stake. So imagine, we had to really think so deeply. Like our friend Michelle told us, step on the balcony and see the big picture, right? In fact, I want to introduce something here too to understand adaptive leadership very well. So adaptive leadership is a higher form, what we call a higher form of leadership, which is like leadership 3.0, which is it's not technical. So there's the technical kind of leadership, which includes, a physician treating a problem, includes M&E, finding data and making sure that the data is sorted and clean, which includes, being able to train and skill people. This one is not any of those. This is when a circumstance, a challenge happens, and within that moment, you must find solutions that don't exist technically, right? And most of the time, they think around communication, emotional intelligence, the ability to adapt and learn very fast, resilience, And so you can imagine that is a situation where none of us has been taught in school that you must go and tell 96 young people, go back home and go through the stampede of a transportation system, take COVID back home to your parents, because that was likely. And actually some of them took COVID back home because you saw the stampede in Kampala. What happened? So through all that, my colleague and I and the team, we had to step on the balcony and understand, okay, we need to find things that would motivate these young people to return home. And we call that at Teach for Ghana being above the line and below the line. So if I introduce, there is a line of leadership and all of us cross it at one point. So imagine a straight line, and above that line, you're curious, you're creative, you're inspired, you're achieving your best, right? Below that line, the moment it goes below that line, if you say you're complaining, you're angry, you're frustrated, resources are not there, you're below the line basically. Emotionally, spiritually, you're below the line. Now, as leaders, we actually go back and forth between that line. But the point of adaptive leadership is to find ways that could bring you below the line into above the line, because at the end of the day, as Michelle shared, we have to go back and lead. We have to go back and help our people. So I use that scenario to let you know that that's the challenges that we had to come through. So we went back, shared candidly with our young leaders. We invited some of them even to share their frustrations. You must be able to hear their frustrations, their fears, because they had to tell us, I'm afraid that I may never return to the fellowship. I'm afraid that my family will not have anything to feed. I knew that after this fellowship, I will have my stipend, I would feed my family. Remember, these are graduates who their families have looked up to as their beacon of hope. Some of us are the first graduates in our families. So Waringa will know that, she will share her story. So I don't want to go into too much. So what changed? The nation, as we do the things as usual, changed. Organizationally, as us changed. So we had to adapt. And so quickly, let me tell you what happened. We then went to what we call the Virtual Training Institute, which has been the most challenging, knowing the internet that we have all been discussing about. In fact, out of those 96, we actually lost about 30 of them. We have now 61. You can imagine. So those are the ones who are able, even people did not have gadgets, internet did not reach them. There was no all kinds of connection issues. So those who are able to stay in the virtual training were those 60. And we've now even brought them back to do like a reconnection of that. So I wanted to share that. So that changed. So in the country, we have to realize that the way we do business as usual changed. Two, in our organization, we have to send people back home to be able to work from home. For the first time, we had to up the internet support for our team members. And we actually worked with our partner, one of our partners, I would mention them because they're amazing, Single Family Foundation, to help us carry out emotional support to some of our team members who needed that service. So whoever needed that service, our HR was able to reach out to them directly. It was anonymous. They would go there, they would get the support they needed. Then number three, we had to put a support system for the children in the communities and their parents. For the last how many years, we've always engaged parents by teaching children, going to their homes, visiting them, having conversations. This time we could not, because again, the Delta variant was very, very high, especially the midway when that came. So we had to engage this small telephone, and we created a program, adaptive program really, called TELE, the Tele-Learning Initiative. So that initiative was meant to help the parents understand COVID by our fellows speaking to them, and then bring the kids together to be able to learn through the telephone. So you will see, if you go on Teach for Uganda's page, you will see like a mother with a phone handing over to the child, and the two children are around listening to someone who is very, very far, probably in Kampala, trying to deliver a lesson of 20 or 15 minutes, 15 for the parents to bring them to speed what their children are learning, to ensure that there's safety, and then 15 for the child. And literally that's how we've been able to keep over 500 parents in this program, and then about 1,500 young people, children in this program. And now, again, adaptively, as the president is already planning to announce return of schools, we are already planning on our school return program. In other words, take the tele now that we are having to teach, now use it to sensitize the parents, to sensitize the community, to sensitize the children that now is the time to start returning to school. In fact, we've also been using it to sensitize them to go for the vaccination and all that. So I think I'll stop there.
James.
Now. Yeah.
Yes, as about to tell us. Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm amazed at the work that Teach for Uganda is doing. I would like to hear from Joseph and Waringa. However, please. He hates it. I'm so sorry. So what does he prefer to be? How do you prefer to be addressed as, Mr. Kasaga or Mr. Arinitwe? Because Michelle's Kasaga is fine. All right, great. So let's hear from Joel and Waringa, but please keep the answers brief. The beauty about this conversation is we can continue it online. So please feel free to tweet out your points and use the hashtag. Over to you, Joseph, and then Waringa, because we have 3 more to go.
Okay, thank you so much, Faith, and all the panelists and the organizers for this program. My name is Joseph Ogwal. I'm the founder and the CEO of Agro Supply. We are an input distribution company. We supply smaller farmers across Uganda with seeds, quality seeds, fertilizer, and any other agricultural tools that they need. We also develop a system that helps smaller farmers pay for all this equipment using their phone without having to take it on credit. Our operation is here in Uganda and as well as opening in Tanzania. Getting back to the question, I actually thank myself for going through the Acumen Fellowship, and learning more about adaptive leadership. It was really helpful, mostly when the pandemic struck. In April last year, I remember we were working with 15,000 smaller farmers. Agriculture is the backbone of this country. Without agriculture, people can't survive. People are not going to go to school. People are not going to go to hospitals. People need to eat. And in April last year, because agriculture seasons always start in February, March, around there. And what smaller farmers need when rain comes back is seeds, fertilizer, and anything that would carry them with production. And pandemic struck. Smaller farmers, about 15,000 of them, had already paid for agricultural inputs. That means we need to supply them. And agriculture is scientific. It works with season. Immediately you miss, and then that means that that season is gone. It was really hard. Like we say, like people said, Kasaja said, we had to step on the balcony and look at the bigger thing. How are we going to operate? How can we get seed to 15,000 smaller farmers or even more without having to get in contact with them, without having to gather all of them together? What are we really going to do as an organization? What is changing? Of course, technology has to come in. We need to start looking at, because time was not on our side. The season was going. The president had already put a lockdown in place. The ministry was struggling to get for us movement permits. You know how our ministries work. You need to submit this and so on. And time is going. We need to supply farmers with inputs. We are getting requests on a daily basis. So what we had to do, we had to as well put our system in place. One thing I know about adaptive leadership, adaptive leaders, is that they use 4 dimensions. One is navigating through a complex environment and leading with empathy and creating a win-win situation for all the stakeholders involved. So we had to use all these adaptive leadership criteria to make sure that we serve smaller farmers. We need to create a win-win situation for ourselves, as well as smaller farmers and our suppliers, as well as lead with empathy, because some of our employees were not going to work. They were going to stay home. So are we going to leave these people? Because people need money to also survive for all this long. So we had to do something for our employees as well as our smaller farmers. So what we did, we created a bunch of what we call village entrepreneurs. These are people who reside within the community, we call them village agents. And then created an SMS bulk system where we could send information to all these farmers and tell them where they can get inputs, because each agent, we gave them a criteria that each farmer can go and pick seed or whatever they've paid for from each agent at a particular time without having to gather together, so that agriculture can continue moving without stopping, so that smaller farmers can produce food for the rest of the population that needs it. And this really worked. And along the way, the ministry and the government also came in with the movement permit, and some of our staff were able to move to the field and to go and serve smaller farmers. But without following the criteria of adaptive leadership, we were not going to do all this. And also, what is being the same? I think technology is the main thing here. I remember before COVID, we used, because our mandate is not—
Joseph,
Yes.
we are almost running out of time. So let me, again, I encourage for the speakers, if you have a very lengthy presentation, please feel free to, if you have a Twitter account, please feel free to go in depth there. But I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you short because I need for Waringa to speak. We have 15 minutes left, yes. But thank you so much for the work you and the team are doing. Waringa, please do share what is staying the same, what has changed, and briefly at that, so we can move on to the next question, since Kasaga will be jumping off at 11.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Waringa Matindi, CEO of Village Energy, and we are a solar company, a productive use solar company. So this essentially means that we install solar systems for businesses to enable, institutions and small factories and hotels to make money. So of course the lockdown happened and we were declared non-essential stuff, right? And our business demands movement. we have to go and do a site survey. We have to go and service a system. We have to go and install a system. So actually, up to date on record, April 2022 is the worst month in Village Energy since it was founded in 2008. We made zero revenue, like zero, you know, like it was, so it was tough. Thankfully, we made things work, adopted things here and there, tried to look for permits, as Joseph is saying, that was hard in itself. Banked on partnerships with other people who had permits. But I think the one thing that really has changed was people's perception of life. I think that was the one thing that was very interesting for us, for me, for the team, even for the customers. People had a different now opinion of introspection of their lives and what they're doing and the choices they're making. That being said, energy now, with people being back home, the energy conversation now became quite prominent, because if you're at home for 24 hours, as we all were, and you have a blackout for 10 hours, then you have to really figure out what are you going to do about this situation, because you are stuck at home indefinitely. So I would say for our industry, that's the one thing that we have appreciated, that there's a renewed appreciation and emphasis on energy and power and who has it and how do they access it, which once the lockdown was lifted and we were able to navigate all these challenges, became a good thing, because now incidentally, our last year, our 2020 year, which started in July 2020 to June 2021, was actually now our best financially. Like that's the year that we have made the most money. So it has been an interesting journey and perspective. We also got COVID in the office. 4 people got it. We had to go home. So it's been quite a journey. I think, we should all write a book, to be honest, about, my year of COVID. I think that's the only place you can be able to grasp, to really say what we have learned so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wariga. And I'm hoping that your colleagues that got COVID are now well. And yes, I'm seeing everyone encouraging us to share our 2020, I survived 2020 stories. But let's move on to, for the purposes of time, we're going to move on to this question, and it's going to be our last. And I will definitely start with Kasaga. And I would like to hear from the 3 of you, how do you engage diverse voices, and how do you hold space to learn, motivate, innovate, and adapt together as you organize in your organization? How have you been able to do this? And you briefly share that, and then we'll return with just closing remarks for the purposes of time. But please feel free to continue this conversation on social media. Kasaga, please.
Yeah, in less than 2 minutes. Thank you so much, Faith. So one, we have to, because those diverse voices are important for us even to come up with any ideas in these adaptive challenge times. So one, we got the team together virtually to really think together, especially the managers, to think together what we are going to be doing for the young leaders, our fellows who were now about 4 cohorts now. Imagine 1, 2, 3, 4 in different years that are supposed to serve in literally 3 communities in Central and Eastern Uganda. And then 2, we also engaged the diverse groups of parents to ensure that we also hear from them, because they were the most affected. The rural communities, there was a question about who was most affected. I think the poor and low income were really the most affected, because they didn't even have the money to afford masks. And remember, even the masks that were guaranteed by government did not reach everybody. The materials that were guaranteed by government did not reach every child, every learner. So we really had to bring in this idea. And then number 2, we engaged our partners. I remember one last example that I will share, where we got books from our partner in Juba Spelling Bee, and we had to ship them to Mayuge and Luero. And we could not go, we were non-essential workers, as Waringa said. So we had to engage DHL, a courier company that helped us ship the materials all the way to the last mile, and then our fellows picked it with their bicycles and dropped them in those communities for the children to be able to learn. So really, I have to say that that was, I think what COVID taught us is that we need each other. We need each other if we are going to survive. And I hope we learn that lesson. I'll share one last quote, which says from Benjamin Franklin. He says, "Change is the only constant in life, and our ability to survive and succeed depends on it." So we need to really realize that we have to work together if we are to survive and thrive, especially in these changing times. Thank you, Faith, and back to you.
Thank you for sharing. Joseph, please do share, be as brief or even beat Kasaga's time. How have you been able to engage diverse voices and hold space to learn and innovate in your organization? Very briefly.
Okay, thank you. I think one is accepting that there's already a problem and we need to work together to find a solution to move forward as a community and as an organization as well. And then two is also creating awareness, because one thing I've learned is that although the community has accepted that there's a pandemic and innovation need to come in play, they also face a lot of challenges with using the innovation. Not only the community, even people at office. I see people struggling to open Zoom calls and so on. So we need to create awareness about what is going to work, which is innovation at the moment. So we have tried from our side. One concrete thing that I think we did together with the community is that when it came to extension, we started sending messages and people are not opening. Farmers were not opening their messages. When you send someone a message on how to plant maize, how to plant soybean, and they don't open. So together with them, I asked them, so what do you think can work? So we realized that people can actually open when something speaks for them. So we developed an AI system, an AI extension system that when a message gets to a farmer's phone, instead of them reading by themselves, the phone actually reads for them the message. So it was like kind of interactive. So that is something that actually really worked. So the most important thing is how to engage voices and make sure that people come together. It's creating awareness about the problem and finding a solution together as a community and as an organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph Waringa. Please.
For us, the challenge was we had like 3 distinct voices that we had to listen to. We have branches in the rural areas, right? And there was this perception that COVID is a Kampala problem. So you guys just don't want to work, or you're feeling special. So you have the branches, people are still going to work and they are open, and masks are a myth. So managing that and their expectations of us. Then here in HQ, we have staff members who are parents and staff members who are not parents, and there's a distinct difference. Because the people who have young children, children, when they see a parent is at home, like they don't understand that I am working. So we would find, you call somebody, they're not answering, or they're like, oh, my child picked and so I could not see a missed call. So having to adapt to that. I remember there was this one time, usually something that takes, if we're all in the office, something that takes about 2 hours took 2 days, because of all the different, people that you're talking to. So even now, making space and room for that. And of course, the other part was our customers, our clients who have existing systems. So now they're at home. They had said, give me a system for a TV that works for 6 hours, but now they want to watch TV the whole day. So the system is not working, or the system is, so it was, so managing everybody and making sure that they are heard, and making sure that they are supported, and making sure that then everybody's problem has a solution. That was a bit challenging. It is still challenging because we're still having some of the dynamics. What you have done, one of the things that you have done is, now at least staff, you're allowed to work from home at least 2 or 3 times a week. But still managing who works from home, for how long, when, and then also now the customers again, how do we support them even when they are misusing or overusing the systems? So I would say we're definitely a work in progress. And Joseph, I love that idea of an SMS that can be read. That's brilliant.
Matinda, is that all?
Yes, that is all. I am conscious of the time, and Kasaga has to jump out.
Yes. Okay, so I have a proposal though. Michelle, I need you to come back for this one. So I have a proposal, since we had about 2 or 3 points of discussions, and I'm seeing that Startup Uganda Kampala Innovation Week is tweeting. So I was requesting that if I can tweet out the remaining questions, tag the different speakers, and you can be able to answer them from there. Is that something that would be open to? Michelle?
More
Is
than
that
happy
something
that
that
I
we
can
can
also
do?
jump in.
Exactly. So I'm going to just tweet the remaining questions, and I will tag, I'm seeing the different handles, and I'll tag us so that we can continue this conversation. But thank you so much for the opportunity and for the brilliant ideas, but most importantly for the work that you are doing. Keep at it. It's been amazing being your moderator. Let me go back to the streets of Twitter and just tweet out the questions so that you can respond from there. Over to you, Michelle. And for everyone else, have a lovely, lovely time.
Yeah, great. Just thank you everybody as well for joining me. I know they say it takes a village. This is my Acumen family. We've probably never met in person, but we jump at any opportunity to support each other. So I'm really, really glad I have such an amazing community with me. I think just my last parting shot before I let us all go is, I think for me it's very important to remember that I don't know all the answers, and that's really the key for me with adaptive leadership. I don't know everything, so the answer is with the people experiencing the challenge, the people experiencing the problem, and I always have to remember to make space to listen to everybody because I don't know the answer. Otherwise, thank you so much, Startup Uganda, for giving Growth Africa this amazing opportunity to share this space with you guys. For more about Growth Africa, Village Energy, or Teach for Uganda, please feel free to hit us up on our Twitter pages. We'll be posting those under the hashtag KIW 2021. I will hand over back to the KIW support team. Thank you so much, and have a lovely day.
All right, thank you everyone for the amazing insights. We'll just close this off in a moment. We do hope to see more of the conversation on Twitter, as Faith had discussed. This is John from Digimark, and we're the ones handling the streaming for this event. So we'll carry on the conversation on Twitter, and do tag us, and we shall be able to make sure it reaches far and wide. And we look forward to seeing more of this conversation during the Innovation Week come Monday. So have a nice day, everyone. We'll see you soon again.